What drives a man to become both a feared vigilante and a celebrated hero? This question haunts the story of Louis Van Schoor, a former South African security guard who claimed the lives of at least 39 black South Africans during the dark days of apartheid. His story is not just a tale of violence, but a reflection of a society deeply divided by race and injustice. In the 1980s, South Africa was a nation fractured by apartheid, with its oppressive laws creating stark divides between its people. Amid this backdrop, Louis Van Schoor emerged as a controversial figure. A former member of the feared dog squad in the police force, Van Schoor transitioned to running a private security company in East London, South Africa. His job? To protect white-owned businesses from any perceived threat. Van Schoor's methods were as ruthless as they were efficient. He installed silent alarms in businesses designed to alert him without warning intruders. Armed with a 9mm semi-automatic pistol loaded with a hollow point bullet, he stalked his victims with a predatory sense of calm, relying on his heightened senses to hunt them down. His victims, often poor black South Africans, were shot mercilessly, sometimes while surrendering or fleeing. While the black community lived in terror, the white business owners Van Schoor protected hailed him as a hero. Bumper stickers declared, "I love Louis," adorned cars, and his exploits were celebrated by those who saw him as a defender against crime. This stark contrast in perception highlights the deeply entrenched racial biases of the time. In chilling interviews featured in the BBC documentary and podcast series The Apartheid Killer, Van Schoor shows no remorse for his actions. He maintains that his killings were not racially motivated, but were simply a part of his job.
All the people I shot are black, but not because of race. That's because of crime. It wasn't a trivial thing to me. It was fighting crime. I was doing my job, and I'm proud of it.
The human toll of Van Schoor's reign of terror is both profound and heartbreaking. Among his victims was a 12-year-old boy whose death underscores the brutal nature of his spree. Another poignant account involves a 14-year-old boy who was searching for petty change when Van Schoor found him. The boy, who cannot be named for legal reasons, hid trembling in a toilet. Van Schoor called him out, forced him to stand against the wall, and then shot him repeatedly.
He told me to stand up, but I couldn't. While I was lying there, he kicked me in the mouth. He picked me up and propped me against the table and then shot me again.
Miraculously, the boy survived but was charged with breaking into the building, while Van Schoor, who killed multiple times, walked free. These stories of violence and injustice paint a grim picture of the impact of Van Schoor's actions on individuals and their families. Marlene Mvubi's brother, Edward Sunis, was another victim, disappearing in 1987 and only discovered dead years later. The trauma for his family, who learned of his death through a newspaper article and later found his body in an unmarked grave, illustrates the deep personal losses inflicted by Van Schoor. For years, Van Schoor evaded justice, protected by the very system that sanctioned his killings as justifiable homicides. It wasn't until the political tides began to turn, with Nelson Mandela's rise in 1990, that pressure from activists and journalists led to his arrest. In 1991, Van Schoor faced one of the most significant trials in South Africa's history. Despite overwhelming evidence and testimonies from survivors, Van Schoor was convicted of only 7 murders and served just 12 years in prison. His early release and subsequent life of relative comfort, despite the atrocities he committed, underscored the lingering injustices of the apartheid era. Today, Louis Van Schoor, now an old man, remains unrepentant. He spends his days in a wheelchair, the result of health complications, yet he still views himself as a crime fighter rather than a serial killer. His story, as recounted in extensive investigative work by journalists like Issa Jacobson, serves as a grim reminder of the horrors of apartheid and the complex legacy it left behind. Van Schoor's tale is a microcosm of a society that once celebrated violence against the marginalized as heroism. It challenges us to reflect on the nature of justice, the power of systematic racism, and the importance of remembering history's darkest chapters to ensure they are never repeated. The story of Louis Van Schoor is not just about one man's violent spree, but about a society that allowed such atrocities to occur. It raises questions about morality, justice, and the long-lasting impact of apartheid. As we delve into his dark legacy, we must remember the victims, understand the systematic failures, and strive to build a future where such horrors are unimaginable. What drives a man to become a feared vigilante and a celebrated hero? In the case of Louis Van Schoor, it was a deeply divided society that turned a blind eye to injustice, revealing the true cause of systematic racism and violence. While our focus has been on the dark legacy of Louis Van Schoor and his impact on South Africa during apartheid, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the legacy of violence and injustice from this era? Do you believe that the systematic issues highlighted by Van Schoor's story still resonate in today's society? Your insights and opinions are crucial. Share them in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to the New Africa channel for more in-depth analysis and updates.